Good afternoon, and welcome to the 2024 Agricultural Roads Improvement Program Informational Webinar. My name is Merrill Meckler-Hickson. I am the Section Chief for WisDOT Local Programs and Finance, and I would like to start by thanking everyone in attendance for your interest in ARIP and in local programs. Today's webinar has reserved 90 minutes of time for both presentations and a short question and answer session at the end. If you do have any questions as you view the presentation today, you can submit those questions to the email address that is displayed at the top of your screen, dotlocalprograms@dot.wi.gov. WisDOT staff will be monitoring the inbox for your questions, and we will either address them live during the Q&A portion or respond via email afterwards. As we go through the presentation, don't worry about taking notes. We will have a copy of the slide deck available on the WisDOT Agricultural Roads Improvement Program webpage after the presentation, along with the link to the replay of the entire webinar, which should be the same link that you used to initially log into the webinar this afternoon. We are going to be reviewing ARIP eligibility, application procedures, and other related information for this recently released project solicitation. However, before we get into that, I would like to introduce several special guest speakers who would like to provide some opening comments. Next slide, please. This slide shows the impressive list of guests that we have assembled for today's webinar. To kick things off, we are pleased to have WisDOT Division of Transportation Investment Management Administrator Justin Schell join us. In January 2023, Justin was appointed as DTIM Administrator. He has over 20 years of experience working in the planning sector on topics ranging from transportation to agricultural and environmental issues. Prior to being appointed administrator, Justin served as the DTIM Deputy Administrator and has held several different roles in the division's Bureau of State Highway Programs. He has a bachelor's degree in English from Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, and a master's degree in urban and regional planning from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Welcome, Administrator Schell.
Thank you, Merrill. Hi, everyone. On behalf of the Division of Transportation Investment Management, the Secretary's Office, and the Department of Transportation, I want to thank you for attending today's webinar. The Agricultural Roads Improvement Program, or what we're calling ARIP, is a unique funding opportunity for Wisconsin communities. And we think that your participation is critical in making this effort a success. So we appreciate that you're here today. I also want to thank all of our partners that have come together to help establish and advocate for ARIP. We've seen many examples in recent years of cooperative efforts improving our transportation infrastructure, and ARIP really builds on that progress. Finally, I would like to thank our WisDOT staff working on ARIP, whether it was working to create a streamlined application process, gathering feedback from our partners, or hosting sessions like this one. They have really been at the heart of that cooperative spirit. I think everyone involved in the process appreciates their dedication. ARIP's goal is to improve the first and last miles servicing Wisconsin's agricultural lands and agribusinesses, making Wisconsin's agricultural industry more efficient and competitive. This is an exciting program, and we want to see a strong application pool. So please let us know what assistance is most useful to you. Since 2019, WisDOT has improved 7,424 miles of roadway and 1,780 bridges. That work would not have been possible without our local partners. ARIP builds off of those past successes and partnerships to confront a challenge facing Wisconsin's local agricultural road system. The challenge is that deteriorating weight-restricted roads and bridges impede the ability of agricultural producers to move full truckloads or large shipments. The resulting detours and workarounds drive up costs and introduce bottlenecks and supply chain problems that have an economic impact for producers and consumers alike. ARIP projects will confront those obstacles by fixing roads, bridges, and culverts to clear those weight restrictions. ARIP is authorized to fund $150 million in infrastructure projects. We will be administering funding in two waves. The current application period will award $50 million in project funding, and a second round we expect to announce later this year will award the remaining $100 million. Again, I want to thank everyone for being here today. As I said at the beginning, the goal of ARIP is to invest in the local transportation system that supports our farmers and rural businesses, making it a stronger and more resilient system. We're excited to see the projects you submit and look forward to investing in your ideas. Working together, we think we can ensure that ARIP will be a success. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Administrator Schell. We also are pleased today to have Wisconsin Farm Bureau Senior Director of Governmental Relations, Tim Fiocchi, able to join us. Tim oversees state government relations with the legislature and administrative agencies. Before joining the Farm Bureau, Tim worked in various capacities in the Wisconsin legislature and state politics, starting in 1998. Most recently, he served as Chief of Staff from 2012 to 2022 for former State Senator Jerry Petrowski, the longtime chairman of the Transportation Committee. In that role, he worked on numerous pieces of legislation impacting local governments and roads, and importantly, he recently led the lobbying effort that helped to create the Agricultural Roads Improvement Program. Welcome, Senior Director Fiocchi.
Thank you, Merrill and Justin. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I'd like to thank your whole team at DOT for putting this together and for working so closely with industry stakeholders on implementing this new program. My comments today will focus on the role farmers and loggers need to play to help their local officials submit successful grant applications. Next slide, please. So what makes a strong application? These grants are going to compete based on their impact to farmers, and that includes loggers because under this program, timber is included in agriculture. Priority for these grants will be given to projects that provide the greatest benefit to agricultural producers based on the criteria listed here. It provides the best economic impact, the largest number of farmers, or volume of agricultural goods, etc. This list comes straight from the statutes. The information on cost reductions, the number of farms impacted, and the access issues overall are going to need to come straight from the farmers themselves, as there's really no other way for your local officials to get it. Next slide, please. What do local officials need from farmers? Well, we need farmers, first of all, to reach out directly to their local officials responsible for maintaining these roads and say, this posted road is a problem for my business, for my neighbors. Please consider applying for one of these grants. Some local officials may already know where their problems are, but it may not be on top of mind for them. Don't assume that your local officials know the posting is a problem or that they're familiar with this new program. Please make the ask. Call up your town chairman or your highway commissioner and talk to them. If they're willing to consider applying for a grant, don't wait. You can provide your local official with the information they'll need using the ARIP Farmer Support Form available on our website or from any of the ag organizations you're a member of. Next slide, please. The form asks for specific information that local officials will need to fill out a successful application. You can find the form on our website at the link on the slide or by going to our website, wfbf.com, and clicking on Policy and then on Current Issues in Agriculture. Next slide, please. The questions on the form are straightforward and tied directly to the questions local officials will have to answer on the DOT application for the grants. You can download the form and type in answers or just print it out and write in answers. As noted on the slide, you should check all that apply for questions like number 5. Next slide, please. Finally, at the bottom of the form is a space for you to explain how the project would impact your business. This doesn't need to be anything fancy. If this route wasn't posted, I could save time and money by running full loads of corn. Or since the road is posted, I have to drive 5 miles out of my way to get milk to my cheese plant. If, on the other hand, you can estimate these costs and include that information in the narrative, that's even better. But a simple explanation will do. These explanations will be helpful to your local official in filling out the application and helpful to DOT and the selection committee to understand the impact the project will have on your farm. Next slide, please. While the form is intended to be as simple and straightforward as possible, if you have questions or just want some assistance in filling it out or in talking to your local officials, we're here to help. You can reach me at this email or phone number on the screen or reach out to your own commodity groups. This is a unique opportunity and a unique program to not only fix some roads that are long overdue to get fixed, but to demonstrate to legislators how great the need is to modernize our rural infrastructure. The original push to get farmers out of the mud started about a century ago. At that time, just getting paved roads in farm country was modernization. Today, when the leading competitor for corn or soybeans might come not from Iowa, but from Brazil, we need to invest in bringing our local roads up to a modern standard that matches the equipment farmers need to use to stay competitive. I appreciate your time and attention today, and thank you again to DOT for having me here.
All right, thank you, Tim. Our next speaker is Wisconsin Cheesemakers Association Senior Director Rebecca Sweeney. The Wisconsin Cheesemakers Association is a nonprofit trade organization supporting more than 600 companies in the dairy processing industry. Rebecca's role focuses on federal and state advocacy, in addition to workforce development, grant direction, and business services. She previously worked for more than a decade in the state legislature and in local TV news. Welcome, Senior Director Sweeney.
Thank you so much, Merrill, and thanks to Tim. You'll hear me share some similar themes just to emphasize that for dairy processors as well. But first, sort of a level set. Wisconsin's $44 billion dairy industry moves more than 88 million pounds of milk and millions more pounds of dairy products over our roadways each day to consumers across the country and for markets around the world. Those dairy processors and dairy haulers joining us for today's webinar, or those watching the recording later on, know that that effort is no small feat. And it's made all the more challenging because of roads that, particularly during spring thaw, are not usable for hauling heavier loads. That's why Wisconsin Cheesemakers Association members are so excited to see the availability of new ARIP funds. And that's why WCMA, like Farm Bureau, is working to provide support for our members' engagement in the application process. It's essential that producers, or as our industry refers to its members, processors, engage now in the process. If there is a road that creates barriers to your productivity and sustainability goals because it is posted, you need to flag that for your municipal leadership now. And you need to provide them with supporting documentation to ensure that their application is strong. Nearly identical to Farm Bureau's fillable form, because to use a transportation pun, why reinvent the wheel? WCMA's offering guides you through very key details to share. Things like, how many employees do you have? What is your annual gross sales estimate? What kinds of products are you creating at your facility? And what kinds of challenges do the roads that you're proposing improvement projects for create for your business? The task requires a bit of thought, but frankly, not much time. I would say that it is a 15-minute project and probably the smartest 15 minutes you could spend this year. The program and associated applications have been designed to be user-friendly, have been designed to be simple. And dairy processors, whether or not they're members of WCMA, should know that I'm just a call away and ready to help them. We encourage you to get in touch with municipal leaders and fill out the support forms within the next couple of weeks to ensure that there's not a mad dash to the finish line. You need to be supporting your municipal leader now so that they have the time they need to put in their application. Finally, dairy processors wish to thank state lawmakers, Governor Evers, agency leaders, especially Merrill and his team, as well as our ag advocacy partners for recognizing the pressing need to invest in rural infrastructure, in turn strengthening rural businesses and ensuring Wisconsin remains America's dairy land for generations. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you, Rebecca. Our next speaker is Great Lakes Timber Professionals Association Executive Director Henry Scheinebeck. Henry was a self-employed logger and trucker for 32 years prior to being named Executive Director of the Great Lakes Timber Professionals Association and the Forest Industry Safety and Training Alliance in 2008. Great Lakes Timber is a nonprofit organization representing over 1,000 forest industry professionals in Michigan and Wisconsin, where he leads the organization in its mission of enhancing a multiple-use forest for future generations. Welcome, Executive Director Scheinebeck. Oh, Henry, you might be muted.
There we go. All right. Thank you for having me today, and Merrill, appreciate the invitation. This is a really important topic, I think, for our industry. And As Merrill said, we work a lot in forest industry, which is the number 2 industry in the state behind agriculture, but sometimes part of agriculture. So next slide, please. So I really wanted to emphasize the importance. Wisconsin has some of the most well-managed forests in the nation from our perspective. They're well certified, they're well managed, they produce a lot of product, and they're also produce a lot of recreational opportunities with trails and wildlife habitat, clean air, clean water, and really everything that I think all Wisconsinites and people from around the country enjoy. And that's why forest management is so important. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we've been talking about for years and years and years, and I'm sure that Mr. Colas and some of the others get tired of us about harping on this, but we depend totally on rural roads and access to them for forest management. I mean, that's where the trees grow. We need to get out of there, and we need to get that forest management done efficiently and effectively. And weight limits are obviously a hindrance, and just having road funding is really critical to getting our work done. And if folks really enjoy forests that they go to and visit, we really need to continue that. And the only way we can have good forests is if we have a solid forest industry. Wisconsin, like other states, has been very blessed to maintain that industry, and having access is really, really part of that. So next slide, please. I think we've done a lot as industries in both agriculture and the timber industry to make adjustments to the type of configurations we run. We've added axles, we've lowered axle weights, we've done a lot of different things to help maintain our rural infrastructure. But we're at a point where there's not much more we can do to minimize the impact. And I think we've done a very good job, because if you think about it, a lot of our roads are 20, 30, 40 years beyond their expected life that they were supposed to be there. I mean, you do a blacktop road supposed to last 20 years. We're running on roads that are 30, 40 years old. So I think we've done a lot in that regard to make sure that we're doing the best we can to maintain what we have. But it's really critical that we start replacing as much as possible, as fast as possible. Next slide, please. So ultimately, I just wanted to say thank you. At last, we have a funding mechanism that recognizes the importance of rural Wisconsin's infrastructure. I really want to thank the legislators and Farm Bureau for pushing this forward, and the governor for signing it into law. It's never too late to start, and I think this is a really good start. There's other programs out there, STRIC, and all the rest of them, and when you look at how many applications come into those programs and what the possibility of this additional funding is to get these businesses and make sure that they're going to remain intact for a long time. I think somebody said earlier when I presented is we're not worldwide Wisconsin anymore. We're worldwide, period. And there's a lot of competition coming in from different parts of the world. And we really need to if we want our lifestyle to maintain and be the same in Wisconsin, we really need to maintain our infrastructure and make sure that we're competitive from the forest to the field right to the manufacturing plant. So again, thank you to the Department of Transportation. You guys have been awesome partners, and really appreciate all the work that all the groups have done to make this program available. And hopefully it will be a huge success with a lot of applications that might invigorate more money being put into it. So thank you.
All right, and thank you, Henry. Our next guest speaker is Wisconsin Towns Association Executive Director Mike Colas. Mike has been the WTA Executive Director since 2014 and has worked in the public or nonprofit sectors for over 20 years, including 16 years as a professor of community development for the University of Wisconsin Extension, where he taught comprehensive planning, local government finance, leadership development, strategic planning, and community economic development. When not working or volunteering, he can probably be found in a tree stand, hunting grouse or turkeys, or in a duck blind. Welcome, Executive Director Colas.
Thank you, Meryl. Really excited to be here. Really excited to see the launch of the ARIP program. Henry, who just spoke before me, and I have been talking about trying to get a program to build priority routes in this state for a very, very long time. If we're going to have a competitive Wisconsin, we're going to have an efficient supply chain. And efficient supply chain means carrying a lot of weight. And a lot of weight means we've got to have priority routes that are built to handle that weight. One of the things that I want to touch on that DOT will probably touch on a little bit is that there are some gateways to be able to obtain this money. And one of those gateways is that the road does have to have been weight limited for at least 1 month during the previous year. That could be a Class B weight limit, that could be a special weight limit, or that could be a seasonal weight limit. So that's one of the gateways, and there's a few more that I'm sure they'll talk about. A real important message that I'd like to share, and you've heard it before already, is that collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. Don't assume your cheesemaker, don't assume your logger, don't assume the grain guy next to you or the dairy guy down the road is going to reach out to you with the information that is necessary to fill out one of these applications. It's going to have to be a real partnership between the ag industry, the forestry industry, and local government if you're going to obtain the information necessary to get one of these grants awarded to you. Some of that information is going to be housed at the town hall, the city village hall, the county board, and some of that information is going to be held by the private sector actors. So collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. Another message I'd like to share is that these are going to be complex projects. I mean, one of the other gateways is that these roads and bridges and culverts cannot be weight limited in the future, except with 2 provisos: under extraordinary or emergency circumstances, or if you obtain a pavement or structural analysis performed by an engineer or your county highway commissioner. So these are not going to be run-of-the-mill roads. These are going to be heavily built roads, complex projects. Because they are going to be complex projects, you're not going to want to get the scoping of these projects incorrect. By scoping, there's a number of things within scoping, but specifically I'm talking about the specs of the project. You're not typically going to find a lot of local government officials unless you have a really awesome public works director, awesome highway commissioner, awesome town road superintendent that are able to go out there and engineer these from the gate. You might need to obtain professional assistance. You're not going to want to spec it wrong, because if you overbuild it, it's going to be more expensive and you're going to waste dollars, your own and the state. And you're not going to want to underbuild it. If you underbuild it, well, then the road's going to go to heck sooner rather than later. And we're back to square one as far as efficiency of the supply chain. You're also going to want to make darn sure that you're spot on with your project estimate. And because these are complex projects, because prices are changing almost daily, you're going to want to make sure to get some assistance on that as well, unless you have somebody on staff that is a real rock star. If you put in a project estimate that is too much money, well, the challenge we have with this program right now is that money, if it comes to you and you don't use it, well, it circles back to the state and not to the roads. On the other hand, if you have a project estimate that is too little, you sign a state municipal agreement, you get into the project, you got to finish the project. And that local community is going to be on the hook for the underestimate. So be very careful here. Obtain professional assistance. Now, the question that I know I'm going to get, or we're going to get, is, well, what if we obtain professional assistance? They scope the project for us, and we don't get the grant. Is that a waste of dollars? And I would say that it is not a waste of dollars, because there are other grant programs that are popping up occasionally, like the Surface Transportation Local Program that came pretty much out of nowhere. Or there's the one that's been pretty tried and true for a number of years, the ARIP program, that now you have a project all scoped out, ready to go, and you can use the next cycle of STP, the next cycle of LRIP, to put that project into the mix, and maybe you get it then. So it's not necessarily a waste. You're going to need to do that project eventually, and there are other opportunities out there. Thank you, Meryl.
All right, thanks, Mike. Our last guest speaker is UW-Madison, Wisconsin, Local Technical Assistance Program Director, Andy Bill. She focuses on safe system, human factors, traffic operations, work zone design, incident management, roadway lighting, engineering ethics, connected and automated vehicles, and traffic safety. She is a passionate advocate for making research tangible to practitioners and to foster implementation and widespread adoption. Welcome, Director Bill.
Thank you very much, Meryl. And thank you for all the guest speakers prior to me. Next slide, please. I'm going to go ahead and just give a little overview of what the Transportation Information Center is about and how we can be here to help you as you go through this process. So there is one technical assistance center in every state and Puerto Rico. This was established in 1982, and the purpose is to provide local agencies with information and training programs to address the maintenance of local roadways and bridges. We were actually funded and founded in 1983. Next slide, please. So our mission is to serve over the 1,900 units of local government in Wisconsin. So whether it's counties, cities, villages, and towns, we're here to help through a variety of different programs. Next slide. So one of the aspects we do is training. So we do training for local street and highway agencies. You may have seen some emails from us in the past with regards to highway safety, work zone and flagger safety, PACER pavement condition rating, pavement maintenance, and winter road maintenance. We also offer on-site training upon request to local government agencies and groups. There's a website at the bottom there if you want to go and check out our workshops. As we get going and looking at the ARIP program, if we do see that there is a need for a specific training component to it, we can spin up a webinar to help provide some information. So it's kind of getting some give and take, like you've heard from all of our other speakers about how we can help. And we want to make sure we coordinate that and communicate as early as possible so we can provide you the material that you need. Next slide. We also do provide certificate programs, so not necessarily related to this program, but as you're looking forward and looking at other options, we do have some public works certificate programs as well. Next slide. So they're Public Works Supervisory Academy, Public Works Management Institute. These have a variety of courses, but do cover, proposals that we'll talk about today, as well as other management classes. Next slide. So when we come into our publications, we do have work zone safety guidelines. We have PACER mains materials. These are available to download as well as to get hard copies of. We also have a very large transportation bulletin series. And as I specifically talk about the ARIP program, we do have some information on those bulletin series through our website that might be helpful for you. Next slide. So we have online PACER and Whistler training, and the reason why I'm going to bring this up a little bit is that there is a really good wealth of information with regards to what pavement type is out there, what's been done, and some kind of other ratings associated with it. We performed training last year. There is kind of online, there's YouTube videos out there. So if you need help on kind of looking to see what that's like, you can go ahead and look at that component to it. There's a website there as well as some information on that. Next slide, please. Within there, it gives you some pavement management tools. And so these are really helpful. And when you're looking at those eligible roadways that we talked about before, and Mike and others have mentioned, sometimes you want to know, well, what's the current condition out there and what are we looking at? So, as we start to look at these proposals, we always want to start at kind of that project scoping standpoint to say, okay, where are we? And then what do we need to get to? So this might provide some information to look at the pavement management in your area or in your jurisdiction or your routes that you go through from farm to farm or locations from different components. Next slide. So there's from the pavement side of the house. As we think about safety, there are definitely different applications to be able to get to your crash data for your area as well. I know that that's not specifically focused on this, but as Mike mentioned, your program might be looking at with regards to maybe ARIP and things of that of the future. All of the crash data is available to you from 1994 until present. We actually, if anybody reported a crash yesterday, it's going to be on our system today. And so you can get there through the WisTrans portal system, which is shown on your screen here. This gets you information with crash data, and it might even have some information with traffic data as well. Next slide, please. So you can get to it through community maps. A lot of you, if you've been involved in your traffic safety commissions, you'll be able to see that. That's based on some Google Maps provided data, and there's also crash data analysis tools that are available as well too. So as you're looking to say, what types of crashes are out there or what are we looking at, that might be helpful. Next slide. So a major component that we do is technical assistance, and this will pull right into what we can help with ARIP as we move forward with it. So we're here to help. So there's myself, I have a staff of Andrew and Ben and others as well too that are here to be able to answer your questions. So if we don't know the answer, we'll make sure that we can refer you to other resources that can help. Most of the technical assistance is provided by phone or email or virtual events like this to be able to move forward. Next slide. So as we think about the ARIP applicant support and kind of what we can do to help you here, we want you to reach out and ask us questions, right? So from a project scoping standpoint or a project review, we can help you look at the determination of those proposed roadway eligibility standpoint. So I know others have mentioned with regards to having to be closed for at least a month in the previous year. We can help you kind of figure that out if you haven't been able to get that information from other folks around you. We can also look at your project scoping to say, how is this proposal relevant to the grant solicitations ranking criteria already, and being able to look at that. In the pre-award, at kind of the proposal standpoint, we are here to help with those project cost estimation tools. They're available there on the website through WisDOT. There's a spreadsheet there. There are others involved too. So as you're getting into those project costing estimations, reach out to us if you've got any questions. We can also review from your proposal language standpoint. I know Meryl will be going over a tips and tricks here standpoint, but if you want us to look at it and kind of review it and say, well, maybe we should look at this to make it a little stronger, or kind of have you thought about this option? We're here to do that. As Rebecca mentioned, if you do it earlier, it's definitely a helpful process. We can give a more thorough review and have more give or take. The last 5 minutes before the proposal is due, we can work on it, but we'll see what's kind of limited at that standpoint. We can talk about those bulletins that are out there on our website and others that can kind of be able to look at it. After you guys get your ARIP application, I'm just going to always talk in the positive sense here and looking at it. We are available on that post-award side too. If you've got questions with regards to project bidding or anything that kind of goes along with that here, we are here to help you and be able to answer those questions. So whether it's just, what is this program about? Are these the types of projects that we should be looking at? We're here on that side. As you get into your proposal development, we are here to help to be able to say, let's talk about this. Let's try to make this as strong of application as possible. And then on the post-award side, being able to help as well too. So we are here to provide that technical assistance. As I mentioned before, if we hear from a lot of folks that are saying, okay, we've got questions with regards to how to use this project cost estimating spreadsheet, we can go ahead and look at putting together a webinar as well on that. So, reach out to us as we go forward. Next slide. We have lots of partnerships, as you can see here today. Everybody is here to help. And so, this is connecting folks up, others with to say, okay, what's the best, we may not be the best answer to your question. There may be somebody else that's on this call or other folks as well that can be able to help. And so it's really about building those partnerships up to make sure that we are getting the right person to answer your question. Next slide. This is the important part here. I want to go ahead and make sure you have my contact information. It's on that left-hand side of the screen. That's my office phone number and my email, as well as information with regards to the TIC right there. So feel free to reach out and let us know how we can help you get all of those great applications in. I look forward to seeing and working with each one of you guys. Thank you very much, Meryl.
Okay, great. Thanks, Andy, for that informative presentation. With that, we would like to transition to the ARIP specific portion of today's webinar. Next slide. Yep. To start with, our interim ARIP statewide program manager, Megan Feely, would like to review ARIP solicitation deadlines, program timelines, program eligibility, application procedures, the project selection process, and other related program information. After her presentation, I will be offering some general guidance about how to create a potentially successful ARIP application. So with that, I will turn things over to Megan.
Thank you so much, Meryl. I'm happy to be here to share some information about ARIP with everyone. So first, before we sort of dive in, I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that the deadline to submit an ARIP application is April 5th at 5 p.m. As you may know, we are planning to have 2 rounds of ARIP solicitations. So the one that I just mentioned, where the deadline is April 5th, that is our first round of ARIP solicitations. That is for a $50 million funding distribution amount, and our first round opened up on February 6th. We are planning a second round of solicitations for $100 million in funding distribution. That is scheduled for mid to late 2024. So more information about that is forthcoming. As a note, we are limiting it to 2 applications per sponsor per cycle. That means that one sponsor can submit up to 4 ARIP applications, 2 in each round. Additionally, if you apply in the first round of ARIP and you are not awarded, you can resubmit that same project application in the second round for reconsideration. So to discuss a little bit about the timeline for this first cycle, like I said, we opened up the solicitation on February 6th, and the deadline to submit an ARIP application for this first round is April 5th at 5 p.m. In April, we will be establishing the selection committee, and then through April and into May, the ARIP selection committee will be reviewing applications for the first program cycle and will be submitting their recommendations to the WisDOT secretary for final approval. We are tentatively planning for the WisDOT secretary to make his award announcements in July for the first application cycle. So we have a lot of resources on our website. If you're looking for information about ARIP, you'll be able to find it by going to the Local Assistance Programs webpage. The link is just right up at the top there, and you'll be able to select Road and Bridge Assistance Programs, and from there you will arrive at the ARIP webpage. Again, link at the top right there. And a lot of the information that's covered in this presentation will also be available on our website, so as well as a link to this webinar. So let's get into just a general refresher about ARIP, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. So the Agricultural Roads Improvement Program is a one-time SCG funded grant appropriation for the 2023-25 biennium. It allocates $150 million to reimburse local governments to improve deteriorating Class B and weight restricted roads that restrict the ability of farming equipment to move full truckloads of goods. ARIP projects can be funded at an up to 90% state cost share, and from the date of legislation, the program has to award projects within 3 years and reimburse projects within 5. To discuss some of the points about eligibility, these 6 eligibility criteria are all laid out within the ARIP statute, and an ARIP project has to meet all of these 6 points in order to be considered eligible for funding. So the project has to be improving a roadway functionally classified as a local road or minor collector. If the project involves a bridge or culvert, then that bridge or culvert needs to be located on a highway functionally classified as a local road or minor collector. If the project is solely for the improvement of a bridge or culvert, then that bridge or culvert needs to be 20 feet or less in length, and it can't be eligible for any other funding under any other federal program. The highway, bridge, or culvert needs to provide access to ag lands or facilities, and they need to be used by at least one producer. And this includes forestry producers, of course. The highway or the highway where the bridge or culvert is located needs to be designated as a Class B highway, or it needs to have been subject to a posted weight limitation for at least 1 month during the previous year. And as some of our presenters have mentioned, this includes special and seasonal weight limitations. After the completion of the project, the highway cannot be designated as a Class B highway, and it cannot be subject to any posted weight limitations other than under extraordinary or emergency circumstances. And finally, the highway, bridge, or culvert needs to be maintained by a political subdivision. So this graphic here just illustrates that first point of the eligibility criteria. You'll see that the potentially eligible ARIP roads are all designated as either local roads or minor collectors. If you have any questions about roadway functional classification, you can visit that link on the screen there. So now let's discuss some of our ARIP application materials. This is a screenshot from our website, and we have a lot of great resources on here to help you through the application process. So first, you'll see that we have the instructions manual. This is really tailored towards the application process. So it will essentially take you question by question through the application. I really recommend as you're filling out your ARIP application to have this instructions manual with you next to you while you're completing it, because it's very helpful in providing some extra context. If you're not sure, what we're asking for in a certain section or why we're asking a certain question, that instructions manual is going to be a great resource for you. We also have the guidelines and requirements document, and this is sort of a document that takes you through the whole life cycle of an ARIP application from project award to project completion. We also have the ARIP potentially eligible roads map application, which I will talk about in just a moment here. And of course, we have the online Access Gov application. Additionally, we do have a 2-page form fillable PDF available upon request for those applicants that might struggle with completing the online application. We do encourage that you at least try the online application. I think it's very helpful in guiding you through the application process. However, that PDF is available, of course, for anyone that might need it. So to discuss a little bit about that map application, this is a picture of it here from I believe it's the Green Bay area. This map is going to display roadways functionally classified as minor collectors or local roads. So keep in mind that this map application does not display any information about weight restriction, and it doesn't factor in any other ARIP eligibility criteria. It's just showing you if the road in question is a local road or a minor collector. Keep in mind that this information gets updated periodically. So if you happen to go into the map and you feel like something in there might not be correct, then I would recommend reaching out to the Wisconsin Information System for Local Roads, and they will be able to confirm the functional classification for you. But overall, this map application is a great sort of first step. If you've got a project in mind and you're wondering if you can check off that first point of the eligibility criteria, this is a great place to start. So before you begin your online ARIP application, we are recommending that you create a login, and this is so that you can save your application as you go. You are able to submit an application without creating a login. However, if you fill out each part of the application and you don't click submit at the very end, you are going to lose your progress. So we don't want that to happen. So that's why it's really important to create a login so that your progress can be saved as you complete the application. So when you click the link to the application on our website, you're going to see this screen here, and you'll see that blue bar at the top where it says log in to store your form. So you're going to click that. And you'll be brought to this screen here, and you will select that you are a public user. And the AccessGov site uses a login credential called the My Wisconsin ID. I believe that this is a credential that's unique to AccessGov. So for most of you, you will need to create an account. So for that, you will go down to this little bottom section here, and you will click sign up. From there, you'll enter in your first name, your last name, and the email you'd like to use, and you'll hit sign up. Now from there, you'll need to set up some security methods. So you will need to click setup, and you'll just enter in your email again, and they will send you a link or a code to your email. And then you'll also need to select a password for the application. Then AccessGov will send you an email with either a link or a verification code, whichever you prefer to use. You will provide that, and you will be brought to the next step, where all you need to do is just provide a phone number, and similarly to the email, they will send you a code to your phone number. You'll provide that code to the website, and from there, you have created your AccessGov application. So now you can proceed with the application. So this is the first section of the ARIP application on AccessGov. And here we're just asking some general project and sponsor information. We ask about the primary sponsor contact information, and the primary sponsor is going to be our main point of contact for the project. So it's really important that you are filling out all of this information correctly. If there happens to be a secondary sponsor involved with the project, you can select yes here, and you will have the option to provide the contact information for the secondary sponsor as well. From there, we ask some information about the project location, including providing a map of the project location. If your project happens to span over multiple locations, you can click that little add button there, and you'll be able to add multiple location points. We also ask that you provide, if possible, some pictures of the project area, and this is going to be really helpful for the selection committee when they are looking at awarding projects, because a picture's worth 1,000 words. So if you have the ability to provide a picture, it will be really helpful for the selection committee. So definitely don't disregard that section. It's not required, but definitely encouraged. Then we ask if the project includes any bridges or culverts. If you select yes, you will be provided with a drop-down menu where you can select your county, as well as provide the structure ID for the bridge. Similarly, if you select yes, that the project includes a culvert, you can say whether or not the culvert has a structure ID, because not all culverts do. And if you select yes, then just like the bridge, you will provide the county where the culvert is, and then will be asked to provide a structure ID. Then we ask for some information about the project, or a project description. And this is going to be where you discuss the current state of the road, as well as any sort of necessary work done, sort of the types of construction needed to meet those ARIP requirements. So next section of the application is where we ask for an estimated project cost. We've broken this up into 4 sections here. If you have any questions about sort of what different costs go into each of these 4 sections, again, the ARIP instructions document is a great resource. This is a really important section, and I'm going to be illustrating sort of why this section is so important in just a little bit here, but just keep in mind that when you are providing an estimate for the project, to make sure that to the best of your ability, it is accurate, and that you're providing, a well-founded estimate when you're submitting the application. So now we ask some quick questions about eligibility. We ask if the road is functionally classified as a local road or a minor collector, if the project area provides access to ag or forestry lands that are used by at least one producer. We ask the applicant to indicate the type of weight restriction that the project area is affected by. And finally, we ask the applicant to confirm that the project area will not be designated as a Class B highway or will not be subject to any other posted weight limitation other than under extraordinary or emergency circumstances. Then this is sort of where the information from the producers comes in. So first, you have a drop down here with that asks for the estimated number of producers that use this route. So say you select 2 here, and then you will be asked to provide the contact information for those 2 producers, and that goes for all of them. If you select 3, then you'll need to provide 3 contacts for those producers, and same thing goes for 4 and 5 and up. Then we ask about the estimated total number of employees employed by the producers. This is across all of the affected producers. So in that situation where you have 2 producers using the route in question, and each of those 2 producers has 10 employees, then that's 20 employees total. So you would select that first option for 1 to 25 employees. We also ask for the total estimated annual value of sales that are affected by the project. Again, this is across all of the affected producers. So then we ask for some questions about the types of products being produced at the facility. So you'll have a drop down here. And you can select the type of product. We've got a bunch of options here. So say you select animal products, and you will be asked to provide the total volume of product transported on the route. If you have multiple producers and those producers are in different industries, so you have one, a cow farm, and then you have a logging company using one road, then you'll click that little add button there and you'll be able to enter the volume for both of the producers. Then we just have 2 quick questions about some cost reduction. So we ask if the completion of the project will result in the reduction of labor costs, fuel costs, and mileage or damage to equipment, as well as other costs. And then we ask if the completion of the project will reduce repeated trips at reduced weights. So now we get into the cost reduction narrative part of the application. And again, this is a really important part for the selection committee when they're looking at applications. So you've got 2 options here. You can do just a text box where you can provide a summary of the impact to producers, or you can do just a document upload, so like a Word doc. And this is going to be really important because, we ask a lot of information, a lot of hard data, but this is sort of where we can get more of the human side of things. So this is where you can provide information directly from producers about, how they're being affected by the current state of the road and how completing this project will make things easier for them, improve, the way that they're able to run their business on this newly improved road. So this is a really important section that definitely warrants some time spent to create a compelling narrative here. So definitely, again, don't discount this section. This is definitely really important. After that, then we ask about if the current route has any sort of deviations from a most efficient route due to weight restricted roads. So if the producer needs to take a longer route due to a weight restriction, then you will select yes here, and you will be asked to provide just an estimate of the length of the sort of deviation from the most efficient route in miles. Finally, we ask just 2 quick questions here. We ask if the project area is the only feasible access point for the production lands or facilities. And we ask if the local government filing the application has any sort of dedicated administrative or transportation staff. Finally, you will check that you have completed this application and that it's truthful to the best of the applicant's knowledge. You'll type your signature and you will sign it, date it, and that is the end of the ARIP application. So once you've submitted the application, it will go to the selection committee. And the selection committee is a competitive discretionary committee made up of local government officials and members of the ag and timber industry. And they're going to look at these 6 points here when they're judging applications. And these 6 points, again, are all provided for within the statute. So they will be looking for projects that improve access by the largest number of agricultural producers. They'll be looking for a project that results in the greatest positive economic impact. They'll be considering if the project area provides the only feasible access to ag lands. They'll be considering if the application that was filed by a local government that faces any sort of demonstrable fiscal or administrative difficulties. They'll also be considering if a project is going to result in the reduction of trips or costs or mileage driven, for example, for the producers. And finally, they'll be considering projects that result in the transportation of the largest amount of goods. Additionally, the selection committee has a discretionary rating based on a holistic review of all of your application materials that were provided, including that narrative section, as well as any pictures that you provide. And this is so that not only are they looking at sort of that hard data that that's been provided in the application, but again, they can look at, the narrative and, how producers are being affected by the current state of this road and how, the community could be bettered overall by completing this project. So they have that discretionary piece in there to sort of provide a more holistic view of the application and not just, fully focusing on the hard data, though those numbers are certainly important. So now we get into talking about why it's so important to have a well-founded project estimate. And this is so that you can prevent any sort of surprises down the line. So scenario 1 is sort of our ideal scenario where you estimate that the project costs $100. Because of the 90-10 split, the project award comes in at $90. So you're awarded $90. And when you begin the letting process, the let comes in at $100. So, no surprises here, just as expected. With the 90-10 split, the sponsor then pays their $10. So then scenario 2 illustrates what happens if the estimate is higher than the project cost. So in this situation, the project estimate is $100 and the project is selected and awarded $90. But the let comes in at $90. This doesn't mean that your project is covered 100% or funded 100%. ARIP projects are capped at project award or 90% of eligible costs, whichever is less. So as a result, with a let of $90, your new award amount is $81, and then the sponsor is responsible for paying their $9 as part of the 90-10 split. So then what happens if a project is more expensive than anticipated? So this is scenario 3, where the estimate for the project is $100 and the project award, again, assuming that 90-10 split, is $90. However, when you begin letting the project, the let comes in at $200. So we cannot increase your award amount. That means that the sponsor is responsible for paying that $100 difference in addition to their $10 from the 90-10 split. At this point, you as the sponsor would have to make a decision about continuing with the ARIP project. And this is why it's so important to have a well-founded estimate made to the best of your ability. Having a well thought out estimate will help you avoid any issues later on in the process, because we really do use this number to determine your award amount. So it's really important to take some time in this section of the application to provide a well-founded, well thought out estimate to the best of your ability. Just to talk a little bit about project types and some eligible and ineligible costs. Some of the eligible project types for ARIP are pavement replacement, reconstruction, and structure rehabilitation. These project types are all eligible simply due to the fact that one of the requirements of ARIP is that the project area cannot have any sort of weight restriction on it after project completion, other than under those extraordinary or emergency circumstances. Similarly, the eligible and ineligible costs here are tied to that as well. So eligible costs include feasibility studies, design, engineering, grading, base, paving, right-of-way acquisition, and other engineering costs. Ineligible costs include project advertising, utility costs, and costs incurred prior to signing the state municipal agreement. So that's really important to know that to not start construction on an ARIP project until you've received that state municipal agreement and you've signed it and returned it back. Because any sort of costs incurred prior to receiving that SMA are not going to be eligible for ARIP reimbursement. Additionally, other ineligible costs are repairs made to the roads that will not result in the removal of the weight restrictions. And again, that goes back to those ARIP eligibility criteria where after project completion, the road cannot be weight restricted, and they must have a 10-year lifespan as well. And you can find more information about eligible project types as well as eligible and ineligible costs in the ARIP guidelines document on our website. So from there, I will hand it back to Merrill, and he will talk a little bit about grant writing tips.
Okay, great. Thanks, Megan. Now, at this point, for those of you who may be new to the typical WisDOT local programs application process, and maybe just as a refresher for some more experienced individuals, we just wanted to take a little bit of a step back from ARIP and go over some generalized basic tips that potentially could help that it's useful to keep in mind when creating a application that will ultimately result in a successful application. Next slide, please. So I wanted to walk through the process for writing a good application for local programs, or really any grant, from start to finish. First, you'll need to do some legwork and some preparation related to the project. The first thing to do when a grant application period announcement comes out, and this may seem obvious, but you'll want to take a thorough look at the supporting documentation that's published by the grant issuing agency, in this case, the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. This is usually the program guidelines document, which for ARIP is included on the ARIP webpage on the WisDOT website. But for some supplemental project solicitations, there may be additional guidance. Study the relevant documents to make sure that you're eligible to apply and to be competitive. Gauging eligibility is generally pretty cut and dry. For WisDOT programs, there is usually a defined list of eligibility criteria, such as the roadway weight restriction and agricultural producer requirements that we have for ARIP. Gauging competitiveness can be a little bit tougher, but generally in our WisDOT programs, and for ARIP, Megan did a great job going over what the statutory ARIP selection criteria are. Looking at the selection or the evaluation criteria within the application materials can give you some big hints and kind of tell you what you need to know about competitiveness. After you've looked at the supporting documentation for eligibility and competitiveness, you can start tailoring your project and your application to the specific program. You'll want to develop a clear definition of both the project scope and the project need. You can also begin to conduct stakeholder outreach. Generally, engaging the community is a good idea, and for ARIP, it's going to be especially important. Especially engaging folks who are going to be affected by the project. Requesting a letter of support, if that is allowed in the program that you're applying for. For ARIP, you can pull excerpts from these types of letters right into your application narrative to make your application more compelling. If you are requesting a letter of support from somebody, please make sure that you do it early. And also remember that you can always provide your writer with an example of a past letter so that they can have a little bit better idea of what to write. Next slide, please. So now we'll move on to actions that should be taken during the application process itself. You'll want to make sure you complete all sections of the application materials. Please note that an incomplete application for ARIP may not be considered, depending on circumstances, and many other programs do not afford applications any sort of leniency. In applications that I've reviewed, the materials that are most commonly omitted include maps of project areas, breakdowns of eligible costs, and photos of the project area. Please remember, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Don't miss your opportunity to include a photo with your ARIP application. There is a spot to include a photo on the Access.gov portal. For most WisDOT programs, a locational map is generally required with each application. One really great way to clearly highlight project area on a map is to use the WisDOT tool called Whistler, the Wisconsin Information System for Local Roads, which has interactive mapping functionality. This is really helpful for demonstrating the precise termini of a project in one map, which is what our WisDOT programs generally require. Whistler also allows local governments to access information related to local roads, such as width, surface type, pavement condition rating, etc. Another must while writing your application, make sure you review your application materials for errors. Look for common errors like word swaps, misplaced punctuation. It can be helpful to read the grant aloud to yourself and have an outside reviewer who is unfamiliar with the project maybe take a look at it. This is independent verification that the grant is clear to people without a lot of inside knowledge of the project. And really, I think that feeds into a larger point about the need to write concisely and clearly. Some of the best applications employ the less is more strategy and keep the materials really concise, specific, and clear. Many of our WisDOT programs, like ARIP, include an application narrative section. And this is your critical opportunity to include additional information about the scope and the benefits of your project. Think of it as your opportunity to speak directly to the discretionary selection committee, if there is one for the program in question, like there is for ARIP, and make sure that you're writing to the evaluation criteria. For ARIP, the selection committee is going to be considering a number of statutorily required criteria, the number of agricultural producers, the amount of economic impact, if the route is the only access, and the reduction of trips and mileage. So make sure that you're highlighting every agricultural producer or processor that is directly impacted by your potential ARIP project. This is information that the selection committee is going to need in order to make a final decision. And writing style absolutely matters here. I hear from selection committees that the best applications really sell the project by speaking directly to the evaluation criteria and engaging the reviewer with compelling information. Successful applications make it easy for the committee to think, this is a really good project. It's worthy of getting a funding and a project award. After the application is complete, it's also really helpful to just read through it one more time with the evaluation criteria in mind. This is how the committee of reviewers is going to be scoring the application, and reading it like a committee member can give you a lot of insight as to whether you're hitting the marks you intended to while you were writing it. Finally, know the application deadline. Submit your materials by that deadline. For ARIP, the deadline is Friday, April 5th at 5 p.m. Make sure you note the time of day that the application is due and submit well in advance of the deadline in case you have any technology issues, if at all possible. Also make sure any attachments, check your attachments before you send off the final version of your application. Next slide, please. Now, after submitting an application, a good applicant has 3 traits. They're proactive, they're patient, and they're persistent. I recommend that you confirm the receipt of ARIP application materials just in case there was an error in transmission. Also, if something changes with your project, for example, if an event occurs that requires some sort of a scope change, please update the department as soon as possible. For programs that do not have a publicized award announcement date, it can be helpful to ask when project awards are likely to be announced. Additionally, in the waiting period between application and award announcement, do not start construction or design work on your project if the work is included in your pending application. Projects with WisDOT funding are not authorized to incur costs until the contract between the state and the municipality, also known as the State Municipal Agreement or SMA, is signed by both parties. Finally, be persistent. Not all applicants are successful the first time, and these are often very competitive programs. If you aren't awarded initially, don't think of it as wasted time and effort. Your initial investment has essentially made you better positioned to be able to apply for project funding in the future. And with all of the historic transportation funding opportunities that have been happening the last couple of years, that's really a great position to be in. Next slide, please. This slide has my contact information. The contact information for local program supervisor Tim Alushagun is right underneath. Up in the upper right is the information for our Bureau Director, Jen Murray, along with Megan's contact information in the lower right. Once again, don't rush to write these down. There will be a copy of the slide deck that is made available on the WisDOT Agricultural Roads Improvement Program webpage, likely within the next 24 hours. Next slide, please. So that concludes the presentation portion of today's webinar. We do have a few minutes left to answer some of the questions we received in the local programs inbox, both before and during today's presentation. Next slide, please. And this slide includes a few questions that we have gotten multiple times over the last couple of months that we wanted to address first. First question, can I apply to ARIP and another program, for example, LRIP or STP local, with the exact same project? And the answer is yes, so long as the project is eligible in every program. Keep in mind you can only accept one award, but we will ultimately give sponsors the opportunity to choose between awards should they happen to be awarded projects in multiple programs. The second question, can I apply to ARIP in round 2 for the second solicitation if I had already applied but was not awarded in the first solicitation? The answer to that, again, is yes. As Megan, I think, alluded to earlier, we are going to have an easy process for unsuccessful sponsors to move their ARIP applications over to round 2 consideration without them needing to fill out an entire form again if they are not selected in round 1. Keeping in mind that there will be a limit in each round of 2 applications per sponsor. And the next question is a great one, and we have gotten it a lot. What qualifies as an agricultural or forestry producer? We are taking a very expansive view of what qualifies as an agricultural or timber processor or producer. Firms that are directly involved in either using agricultural lands or the production or processing of agricultural or forestry resources for the sake of ARIP are all going to be considered producers. Some examples would include crop farmers, animal agricultural farmers for cows, sheep, pigs, chickens, etc. Animal feed and fertilizer producers or processors, greenhouses, cheesemakers, dairy processors, loggers, and logging or paper processing plants. Now, a strict retailer of agricultural products would not qualify. The firm would need to be involved either with the production or actual processing of these types of resources. If you have any questions about specific examples of businesses, please don't hesitate to reach out to either Megan or myself. Lastly, are gravel road projects eligible for ARIP? The answer there is no. These roads are eligible for LRIP funding in some circumstances, but the department currently does not feel that a gravel road can be improved sufficiently to permanently remove weight restrictions with a 10-year useful life. And keep in mind, removing those weight restrictions are a statutory requirement of the program. So Megan, I guess at this point, do we have some other questions that have come in via email?
Yes. So we have a question here about the at the map application for eligible roads, and I guess it looks like this is a public works director from the town of Pleasant Springs asking about why a specific road that they had in mind was discluded from the map. So again, just as a little reminder, so that map only shows local roads and minor collectors. So it could be that the road that you're looking for is not considered a local road or not functionally classified as a local road or a minor collector. Of course, the map does not guarantee eligibility, but if you have any questions about a specific roadway, I would encourage you to reach out to WisDOT to get some clarification on what that road's functional classification is.
Yep, it would be in these cases. We can take a look at the specific area in question and get back to you with an answer. I do see one question that I definitely wanted to respond to. I'm not entirely sure what municipality it comes from, but it's a fair question that we've been getting a lot. Some of the questions on the ag producer application form seem very biased. How many full-time employees? What's your gross income? Really, questions like this appear to be favoring townships with large farms versus small farms, which are more common. Are these types of questions really necessary? I wanted to make sure I responded to this question because we certainly anticipated that providing the statutorily required information, and definitely note, the information on the application form is required by the legislation. We anticipated that providing all of this, especially the producer financial information for the discretionary project ranking, would potentially be challenging for prospective ARIP applicants. For this reason, the ARIP application form and the project selection model were both developed in close consultation with industry and municipal organization representatives. We involved stakeholders from the Wisconsin Towns Association, the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, the Wisconsin County Highway Association, the Wisconsin Farm Bureau, the Wisconsin Cheesemakers, both of whom participated today, the Great Lakes Timber Professionals Association, and other industry representatives, along with WisDOT staff, who all participated in this process. As discussed earlier in the webinar, both the Wisconsin Farm Bureau and the Wisconsin Cheesemakers have developed an ARIP application support form to make this process easier. And they're sharing these forms with their members to help them provide the financial information that's required on the application form to prospective ARIP applicants. For applicant support, as Andy Bill highlighted, the UW-Madison Wisconsin Local Technical Assistance Program is available to provide assistance, as are WisDOT staff. However, ultimately, at the end of the day, folks are definitely going to need to take the time to go through the application process. Please keep in mind the ARIP Discretionary Selection Committee is going to be considering a lot of different types of information and data holistically when they're considering ARIP applications. So all applicant types, we're aiming to give everybody a fair shake. Folks who have large impacted agricultural or timber firms, those with a lot of smaller farms, are both going to have a potential path to an award. The ones with larger firms should be able to provide a lot of quantitative numbers, raw economic data that would be able to support an application. And then applicants who have groups of small farms will be able to provide more qualitative stuff, testimonials that could also provide support for an ARIP application in the project narrative section of the form, again, which is what makes that narrative section so important. The goal really, again, is, that we're shooting for is to give all applicants here a path to an award. And the ARIP Discretionary Selection Committee is going to be reviewing these applications holistically and essentially giving all types of projects, both large and small, an opportunity to potentially be selected for an award. Megan, are there any other questions that you see?
Yeah, I've got another one here from the town of Spring Green, talking about the weight limitation requirement. So this is Brandon Evans says, I've been told that with this program, we can't weight restrict the road that gets accepted. What do we do when the road starts to fail? So it is correct that part of the ARIP eligibility requirements state that after the project is completed, there cannot be the road can't be qualified as a Class B road or classified as a Class B road, and it can't be subject to any sort of posted weight limitations, so special or seasonal weight limitations. Of course, other than under those extraordinary or emergency circumstances. And the roadway also needs to have a 10-year life, which is certified with an engineer's certification at the time of project completion. However, there is, of course, also, the option within the statute to weight limit the road with an engineer's certification if that is necessary. However, of course, the intention of the project is that that the road will not be weight limited after the completion.
Okay, great. And do we have any other questions?
Let's see. There is one quick question, I guess, from Town of Morgan. Lori asks, how many applications do you have already? We have not received any applications yet, but do not let that sort of slow you down from submitting your application. Obviously, it's really important to get those applications in as soon as possible, so that you can avoid any issues with submitting the application, and so that if there are issues with your application, we can communicate with you to help you along in that process.
Okay. All right, fantastic. Well, I do want to thank everybody, all of the speakers, and everybody watching for their time and their attention this afternoon. Next slide. And with that, we will conclude today's webinar. Thanks again, and everybody enjoy the rest of your day.